Hello, good morning. My name is Ignacio Fonseca. Together with me is Diego Mazzone from DVelop Software Solutions. We will be telling you our experience in development for smart devices. DVelop is part of the Smart Devices program, and 2 years ago we started building the BlackBerry generator together with our tech. We have developed many applications, from banking applications to social networks. We have developed the first banking mobile for BHD, one of the most important banks in Dominican Republic. We have also developed a CRM for Paraguay, but for Bancard. We have developed the Green Tizen application that was launched last year. That's a social network that is an environmentalist advocacy group. We have also developed the application for the Punta Carretas shopping center. This, among other things, allows you to get to the shopping mall and see how many parking spots are free. And you can also store the location of the car so that when you come back, you know where your car is. Our agenda will be, first of all, the smart devices philosophy, how to develop with this generator. Then we will talk about the layout. Then we will talk about implementation, and then distribution among the different marketplaces. And finally, the lessons learned. The smart device philosophy is a change of paradigm that's quite important, similar to when we switched from Win to Web. It's quite significant for developers, for software houses, and now we are seeing something similar in terms of going from web to smart devices. One of the main aspects is the diversity of devices that we have, as Nicolas mentioned. Not just devices, also platforms. Some days ago, Nicolas Jodal said that there are some key players, BlackBerry, Android, Apple, etc. But the fact that we have 3 or 4 players is already quite complex in itself. And then there's also a number of devices for each of these platforms. Another important aspect is that the applications that we will be developing, if they're going to be published in a marketplace, it will need to be approved by the marketplace. That is to say, our applications will be assessed and tested by other people from a design point of view, in terms of how they run, how they are structured. And another important aspect is that the application will be tested by the user community that will be using it, and even more if it is public and is within a marketplace. So those are the aspects that we need to consider when making these type of developments. Let's now talk about the layout. The smart device generator allows us to work with a wide range of devices and screens for many platforms. GeneXus gives us the possibility of working with different sizes, different resolutions, different orientations, working with layouts, and with a number of devices. Now, Apple launched the iPhone 5 that changed its size. It's somewhat taller. They're all different, and we need to be able to encompass all the devices. Let's now talk about the communication with the designer. In this case, I would like to tell you about an example for the Punta Carretas shopping application. This application is quite unconventional, so to say. It allows us to see the free spots on the parking place. It allows us to store where we parked our car, etc. But in the survey stage, we thought it was important to set up a number of wireframes for the designer. This would be the wireframe on the screen that would allow us to see the number of free parking spots on the parking area. And this is what we gave the designer. From this wireframe, the designer generated the corresponding images, so that you have an idea that wireframe generated some 20 images. The designer gives us those images as we see them, And then we developed each of the screens. Communication with the designer in this case was very important so that both parties would have a clear idea as to what would be the final look of the application. Here we have another wireframe of the merchant screen, how to look up per category, etc. In each of the screens, the designer also gave us an image similar to this one that tells us what the size of each image, cell, type of font, location, etc. By using all that information, this communication with the designer allowed us to design the application in an efficient way and also with the approval of the client. On the other hand, we have the green to Zen social network, thinking about the iPhone, Retina, non-Retina, whether we want to have both resolutions. We need to be able to work with the designer so that he sends us both images for both resolutions, as we see over there. So these are decisions that we need to make beforehand, depending on the device the application will be used for. So it's very important to bear this in mind in terms of the design. Here we have another set of images. As I told you, the designer gave us this in both resolutions so that we would have the Retina and non-Retina version. Then we have layout guides for every marketplace that are available in the wiki pages of GeneXus. In the PPT, I will give you the links for them, so that if you're interested to take a look at each of them for every marketplace. Now I'll give the floor to Diego in order to begin with the architecture part. I will tell you about the implementation stage, some important aspects of architecture, of the development methodology of prototyping and extensibility. In terms of architecture, we wanted to give an overview of the smart devices architecture because these will help us understand some of the concepts that we'll mention further on in terms of publication and distribution. On the client side, we have the native application and the whole bundle with the metadata and resources. Within resources, we have images. On the other side, on our backend or server side, we have our web application, where we have a series of REST services that will interact with the native application. Ultimately, the communication would be our native application in our intelligent device will interact with those REST services on the backend, and they will also interact with the database in order to provide a response to our application. In terms of the backend, we wanted to share as a company with you some of the experiences, as Ignacio mentioned, of the applications that we have developed. And we found that we have three different types of backend. Those are service-oriented, transaction-oriented, or a mix of both of them. As a way to sum this up, we have this chart with the different types of projects or clients that we have, and the backends, which are the most appropriate. In the case of banking application or large companies that have an IT department or that have IT solutions already implemented, they will offer a layer of services with which we will be interacting. This can be done because of security policies, and the client offers an intermediate layer of services. As if you remember, instead of having our backend interacting with the database, it will be interacting with that layer of services. For example, this could be done through web services. For small firms or startups or companies that don't have IT solutions already developed, we will work with a transaction-based backend so that we can interact with our database. And finally, sometimes we offer a mix of both of them, by which we manage transactions and they offer web services for consumption. For example, that was the case of Punta Carretas. In the Punta Carretas application, as Ignacio mentioned, one of the main features is the parking spot feature, whereby the application offers the possibility of storing the place where we parked our car, and when we leave the shopping mall, we can retrieve the information and we see a map of where we parked our car. One of the problems or an aspect to have in mind here is that in the lower floors of the shopping parking spaces there was no network, so we didn't have the infrastructure to establish communication with our backend, so we were not able to interact with the database, and we couldn't have the data in a persistent way as to where we parked our car. One of the issues of the offline world is of saving something in the memory of the device, and this was the solution that we found for the problem that we mentioned, in the sense that we didn't have network coverage. There will be many presentations on fully offline applications. We recommend that you attend. We will not get into more detail right now, but we wanted to share with you some of the aspects of this, which is to save in memory. In terms of development methodology, one of the main questions that you need to make when you start developing a mobile application is to know whether you'll be using the same KB that you had developed for your web application, whether it will be integrated in the mobile part or whether it will work with separate KBs. As a company, we don't want to say whether you need to do this one way or other. What's important is to know this before you start developing. Why? If we are doing a parallel development, both of the web and mobile applications, the idea is to use the same KB, maybe just because of change management, because otherwise we would have to synchronize both KBs, and if we modify something on one, then we would have to modify everything on the other one. And if the KB becomes large enough, and if we add more people to the team, this becomes more difficult. What happens if our web application has been developed in Evolution 1 in 2007, for example, and if we, after some time, we decide to extend and to go to the mobile part? Do we use the same KB? Yes? Or do we need to migrate to Evolution 2? GeneXus offers this in a very easy way. There's not any problem about it, but you need to have something in mind. For example, the use of DAM. If you want to use integrated security only in the mobile, in the web part, or in both, the size of the KB, maybe the mobile application only uses a couple of transactions and the web application might use thousands of transactions. So why work with such a large KB when you will only be modifying some transactions or reusing some of them? In terms of teamwork, in DVelop, we work with GeneXus Server. We believe it is a key tool, an essential tool for GeneXus developers. For those of you who don't know this tool, GeneXus Server comes as a solution for diversity. It gives us a mechanism that's easy in terms of change management, traceability. Based on this, we might do audit tasks. And an important thing is also the backup. Even if every company might have backup policies that are different, we believe that GeneXus Server gives us a simple way of always having our latest version on the cloud and thus avoid possible losses. In terms of prototyping, we have three main pillars, which is KBN prototyping, which is a knowledge-based navigator using emulators or using the devices. In terms of KBN, for those of you who are not familiar with this tool, this is a tool that's developed in GeneXus that's available for being downloaded in the markets of three platforms, Android, iOS, and BlackBerry. And this allows us to emulate the behavior of our application to see how it will behave and how it will look from a visual point of view. It only uses metadata, so prototyping with KBN is very fast. On the other hand, in order to deal with the huge diversity of devices, we have emulators. For example, in the Android world, we within the same platform have different devices, different sizes, different resolutions, and different versions of operating systems. And many times we either don't have the whole range of physical means to test the device, or we don't want to use a KBN. So that's why we have emulators to work with this type of diversity. Finally, we have prototyping through devices. We believe that this stage is essential before getting into production or into distribution to clients, because when we use KBN or emulators, this will be 100% similar to what this will be like. It's important to run a couple of tests on the devices in order to see what the client will actually see. We also want to share with you our experience in DVelop with the different platforms and the best ways that we found in terms of prototyping. In terms of Android, we believe that the most adequate thing and the easiest thing is to prototype directly on the device. I am mentioning this right now. For an application to be run in a mobile device, it needs to be signed. GeneXus, in the case of Android, in every F5 signs our application with an RTEX signature, and if the cell phone is connected to the PC, it will detect that there's an Android device connected, and it runs our application. So in some minutes, our application is in our cell phone in order to test it and see how the client will see this. For those of us who had BlackBerry, or for those who work with these platforms, we know what it means to uninstall or install an application in BlackBerry. Many times the phone requires us to restart the whole system. That is why we recommend to use the KBN, because as I said before, it only uses metadata. It's a very fast process and is really similar to the version that we will see in the device. Finally, we have iOS, which we recommend to use the KBN and emulators here. In the case of emulators, please bear in mind that for this it is necessary to have a Mac machine. In the case of the KBN, no, because it works only with metadata. Extensibility. We want you to leave from this place with the idea that generators are not something rigid, something that cannot be extended in terms of their features. And since it is done for web, it is also done for mobile, and we can extend those features through user controls or external objects. Just to tell you about two specific cases of each that we worked with in DVelop. As Ignacio had mentioned regarding the banking application, we had a user account number, for example, that could begin with 00334. So we couldn't have a variable that was based on a number domain, but we wanted the keyboard to be numeric for the user. So if we were based on a varchar variable, we would have a QWERTY keyboard, so we implemented a user control that allowed for that, to use variables of the varchar type, and also to show the user a numeric keyboard. In terms of external objects, for one of the applications that we developed for a international telecom company, we created an external object for translations, which basically was based on translation files, and based on that, and taking into account the language chosen by the user, to modify everything, to modify the content of variables before they were shown on the screen. Another important thing is that both external objects and user controls can be contributed by the community, and this really extends the features of generators, which already have a lot, but if you want to customize something, then this is also possible. In terms of distribution, we have two important issues here. One, publication, and then updating. In terms of publication, we want to upload applications to the market or distribute them internally. As I said before, applications need to be signed in order to be installed and run on smartphones. In the case of Android, the bundling is an APK. GeneXus signs with an ARTEC signature in each F5. So our APK is available to be installed in the device of the client. In the case of BlackBerry, all we have to do is a very simple process, that is to log on to the BlackBerry page and to obtain a certificate for signing those applications. This process is done for free. Then we incorporate this to GeneXus, and then GeneXus will be signing the BlackBerry applications. In the case of iOS, this has a cost, so we need to have an account for Apple developer depending on the account type that you have. You will be issuing different certificates for testing, for uploading to the store, or for distributing your application internally. In the case of iOS, what you generate is an IPA. And if we want to distribute that internally, we upload that to our server. This is downloaded by the client, and then it is installed in his device. We don't want to get into much detail, but we want to share with you a series of links of the Wiki of GX Technical, where you might find the different steps, information that's very summarized in terms of the different platforms and the market. This platform will be uploaded so that you can download it and you can see all the links. Finally, in terms of updating, we have an application in the market and we want to update it. Let's put an example about this. The Punta Carretas application for iOS. We have the application in the market and we wanted to update it. So the first question that we need to make is, what type of change is it? Depending on the type of change, we'll have two possible roads to follow. One, to regenerate the bundle and upload it to the store. Then Ignacio will be telling you about the time to market of each platform. But I can tell you that in the case of iOS, Apple takes 1 or 2 weeks to authorize the upload of a new bundle to the store. Sometimes we don't have that time, or we can go through the other way I mentioned before, which is to tell the application to update its own metadata. This will depend on the type of change. If it's a change of images, then we will have to regenerate the bundle and upload it to the store. If it is a change in layout, we can modify metadata. And in GeneXus is a very easy way to choose the versioning, and we just tell the application to refresh metadata. So when the user opens the application, he will receive a message of the application being updated or refreshed. And in the other case, it will be redirected to the store. Now I will give the floor to Ignacio, who will share with you some lessons learned and some tips.
Just to summarize, we want to share a few overall comments on the development of personal device applications. First, from the commercial standpoint, GeneXus as a technological solution is very good. It allows us to develop for all platforms, adding Windows 8 now. We have seen that the work to take one application from one platform to another is between 40 and 45% when it's ready, 30 and 40% of work to move to another platform. On the other hand, we see a good alternative first to develop the application for one platform first and then extend it, because in the course of the project you have to change the design or implementation or transact. So it's better always to do this covering one platform, and once the version is closed or extend it to others. This allows us to do a more efficient work, and this is where we find this 30–40% of rework. In addition, to align expectations with those of the customer. Talking about the diversity of platforms and devices, we need to agree with the customer what platform do you need to be released first, what is more interesting for you, and what about the devices, do you want Retina version or not? And this is how we go about each platform. Finally, Diego mentioned the time to market for each platform. When we organize proposals, the customer must know about the time of each marketplace, how much it takes to publish information in the marketplace. In the case of iPhone, to create an account will take about 2 months for approval. You have to meet certain requirements and present information. It will take about 2 months. And to do the application, it takes 2 weeks. In the case, we have to upload a new version. Or if we want to modify the metadata, it's done instantaneously. You don't have to upload a new version. And then in terms of costs, we need to investigate the cost of each platform. iPhone, the developer account will be $99. The enterprise account is $300. But if it's just to go up to the market, there is one for $99. So it is important to analyze that some of these costs will have to be borne by the company that develops. And this will be with amortizations over time. Other costs will have to be borne by the customer, like the layout, designs, and so on. Finally, we would like to mention a few conferences relative to this, apart from recommending that you visit the guides for each marketplace that were mentioned by Diego. There are conferences related to this. The offline application will be mentioned in several conferences during this event by Gustavo Proto, usability and design for smart devices, and so on. Thank you. I don't know if you have any questions that you would like to make now. We have a few minutes left. All right, we'll be around in our stand, so come to us and we'll talk. Thank you very much.